Hola, bienvenidos a todos, or welcome everyone. Just wanted to say hi, and we're here to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, and we thought what better way than to celebrate with food, in particular not so much a recipe, but basically showing you the foundation for a lot of Caribbean and Latin American cooking. Sofrito is what we're here to talk about. And sofrito is actually not just the base for a lot of foods, but it's also a way of cooking. A lot of people may not know this, but sofrito started way back in the medieval times in Spain, and it actually started off with just with slow cooking, basically slow frying of food, and that's actually what sofrito means. It actually means to lightly fry, and so from back in the 1300s all the way to today, a lot of it hasn't changed. There's been a lot of variations to it depending on where you go. My parents are from Puerto Rico, and that's the way I learned, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. So basically, we start off with the core ingredients, and the core starts off with peppers, and we're talking your traditional bell pepper, and you're also talking your Cuban peppers, which are Italian style pepper. And then we're going to move on to our other core, which is cilantro. And depending on where you go, but primarily in Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, you'll see this, which we call recao, but people would say in English would be culantro. So these actually are very similar herbs. They're like kissing cousins for the most part. But there are differences in the flavor. Cilantro is much milder than recao. Recao is like a very powerful, very bitter, but it adds a whole different dimension to the sofrito than you would have if you didn't have it. And then we move on to pretty much our standards, the garlic and onions. And pretty much wherever you go, Spanish onion is pretty much the standard, but you can go wherever your heart desires when it comes to onions. Some people like a little spicier, they go with the red onions. Some people like more of what we call like a white onion flavor. Depends. It's all up to you. The thing about sofrito is it has so many variations that it's hard to go wrong, and it can be your own little experiment essentially, how you want to play with the flavoring. Sofrito by itself has been used for rice dishes. You can use to marinate meat. It has a wide variety of uses. A lot of people use them for soup, like a soup base to start it off. And for general purposes, we use it for rice dishes and to kind of kick off the flavor in rice. Whether it's rice and beans or rice with chicken, whatever the case may be, this is the start off point for all those types of dishes. So we're going to mix it together. We're going to store it and just show you basically the basics of it all. So the Cuban pepper is the largest of the ingredients. Now, for our purposes here, since we got a small container, we're going to kind of size it down. But generally, if you were making like a large pot of rice, let's say, or a large soup, this would be set to about half of what you actually really need. So we set it down into this smaller container. We're gonna start off with the peppers, grind them down, then gently add everything else slowly as we get going, and then finally mix everything together. So that's what we're showing right now. Let's start it up. So the peppers, we just start popping them in here. And some people use a food processor. Some people do old school blenders. We got the bullet here. And I'm just going to pop them in here. And all right, let's start blending. Pretty quick. Now, consistency, you really don't want it too watery. And when you start adding the other ingredients, you'll start getting more of a, I wouldn't say paste-like, but it'll have a little bit more, it won't be as runny as if it was just pepper straight. So you'll see that change a little bit once you start adding other ingredients. So we're going to move on to the cilantro and the recao, or the culantro, some people call. There's like a million different names from just doing some research on the recao. There's like a million different names for it, depending on where you go. And like if you go to Haiti, they call it chardon beni, and some people, they call it broadleaf cilantro. There's all kinds of names for it, which is pretty interesting. So we'll chop that up in there. Now, depending on what you're doing too, the consistency and the thickness of it, and even how much you chop the ingredients up, is pretty much up to you, depending on what you're doing. Usually when you're making a rice, you want pretty much everything really well chopped up. But if you're doing it for like as a marinade or something like that, you don't have to go crazy with it. You can keep things really chunky inside, actually. Because some people like putting the sofrito on the meat at the very end of the cooking process, so that it's just barely warmed up and it's more or less like a topping for the meat. So it really depends. All right, let's go with the garlic. Garlic is another of the heavier ingredients besides the peppers. So go heavy with the garlic. And then your onion. Also a good amount in there also. And like I said, because of the size of the container we have here, I'm just kind of keeping the ingredients portions as close to what they need to be, but just less of it. And like you just kind of eyeing it up. This is a good consistency right now. Now the last part really is kind of also part of your recipe, whether or not you use it or not. We got salt and we got olive oil. Now generally when I make a rice dish, I already have these ingredients in it, and I wouldn't even need it. For me, this is the end. But if I was going to preserve some sofrito for later in the week for something else, I would definitely add the olive oil and the salt as a preservative, just so things don't go bad. And generally this stuff will last about a week if you do it right. And you're just talking maybe a teaspoon of olive oil. And some people like mixing it together or just leaving it on the top, just so it keeps kind of like a protective layer over the top of it. So either way, it's great. So there you have it. I mean, it's pretty simple, but very effective flavor boost to any kind of meal that you'd be preparing. Whether it's a rice dish, fish dish, meat dish, it really doesn't matter. Sofrito has almost no real limit as far as what you can do with it, which makes it a great dish a great recipe to learn and add to for anything. So I appreciate it. Take care. This is Chris Estrada, and have a great Hispanic Heritage Month. Take care.